There's been a spike in the number of anti-Semitic attacks and abuse across Australia over the past few months. Australia's Jewish community says it has recorded a six-fold increase, a trend reflected globally. While Australia's Jewish leaders say the situation isn't as bad as in Europe, some young Jews are reportedly scared to wear traditional clothing in public. Iskander Razik reports.
For some, the horrors of World War II are a relic of the last century. The black and white reels seem ancient, but for others, the memories burn.
Then they tattooed us. I'm tattooed. And I cried again. I wasn't a crybaby because by that time I had no childhood. I was now anymore a child.
The Warsaw Ghetto, Nazi work camps, extermination facilities and death marches. Lucia was an eyewitness to it all.
After 3 months, one day, they took us 1,000 women. It was a very hot day, July. We arrived in a place, in a huge place with shower recesses, and we didn't know that we were in gas chambers.
But painful as it is, she relives it regularly. Lucia volunteers at the Jewish Holocaust Museum in Melbourne, educating young Australians about the past in the hope it never happens again. But on the streets of Australia, anti-Semitism is reportedly on the rise. The Jewish community has recorded a six-fold increase in anti-Semitic attacks.
They range from physical assaults, of which we've had a number, a lot of email harassment, phone calls, a lot of graffiti. There's the whole gamut. We're talking more like 35, 38 incidents in 1 month in July, and I think similar in August. But don't forget, they're just the Victorian figures. And we have similar amounts in Sydney and lesser, but also significant amounts in the other states.
The first major migration of Jews to Australia occurred in the 1930s. Some came to Australia to avoid persecution before World War II, and others, like Lucia, came after it to start anew. Today, the community is concentrated in Sydney and Melbourne. About 60,000 Jewish people live in Melbourne, and most have settled here in the city's inner south. It is considered Australia's largest Jewish community. There are dozens of Jewish-run cafes, shops, businesses, as well as schools. But even here, they don't feel 100% safe. On the surface, things seem well in the tight-knit community. Some Jewish-run businesses have become Melbourne institutions. But prosperous businesses have been targeted in the past, and Jewish schools have high fences and guards to protect students.
I hesitate to use the word afraid, but I think we know that we're under threat.
Yet the community feels this recent spike is more worrying because it's having a serious impact on its youth.
We've had a huge volume of reports from schools whereby Jewish students are being taunted and are being harassed because they're Jewish. And again, it's happening at universities, it's happening with graffiti and swastikas being sprayed on synagogues, on Jewish cars. So that's very concerning, and I've been hearing from Jewish students that they were afraid of actually wearing anything which would identify them as Jews.
The community believes attacks are correlated to events in the West Bank and Gaza. However, it does not believe that is the root cause of Australian anti-Semitism.
When there's a conflict in the Middle East, especially between Israel and the Palestinians, or Israel and Hamas, these people have a justification or legitimacy to cloak their hatred for Jews as a guise for advocating for the Palestinians or through the Palestinian cause.
I was a child of 2, 3 during the Holocaust. And my mother tells me that I said to her, why are they killing us? Have we done something absolutely dreadful? And my mother said, no, we are just Jews. And at the age of 3, I said, they can't kill us just because we are. They can't kill us just because we are Jews. And I'm a lot older than 3, but I've never yet found the answer to my question.
But what is clear to some members of the first generation of Australian Jews is that the current climate is eerily similar.
Some feel as if they're revisiting the Germany of the 1930s. We all know that any racism starts with abuse and words, escalates to other forms of harassment, escalates to violence, and then we know how much further it can go.
And they are asking the rest of Australia to stand up against it and all forms of racism and bigotry before discrimination gets worse.
Auschwitz did not begin with the bricks. It began with words that dehumanized, denigrated, and then these words turned into bricks that built Auschwitz. So I think schools, for instance, need to teach young people that when you abuse someone, you're not only, in a sense, dehumanizing and denigrating and devaluing them, but it's also robbing you of your humanity.
And community leaders aren't giving up on the future, despite the problems of the present.
I would like us to be able to walk down the street without wondering whether we are at risk. I would like all the groups in this community, not just the Jewish community, to live amicably, because I'm an optimist.
I work here to stop killing. I have not only Jews, but all over the world. Also, it gives me great satisfaction to tell the children my messages. The first message is, don't be a racist. We are all the same people.